Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon for those of you that are across in Europe. I want to thank everybody for attending our GEL How-To webinar. My name is Federico Pena. I am the founder and president of IT-ROI Solutions. I will be your featured speaker for today's webinar. The first thing I want to cover is I want to cover some quick housekeeping questions while we wait for the rest of you to trickle in. I've seen quite a few people trickle in the last 15, 20 seconds. So to ask questions regarding this webinar, you have on your tool panel, on your toolbar, there is a questions section. Feel free to type any questions. What I'll do is I'll answer the questions as I go along, depending whether it's relevant to the topic that I'm currently talking about, or I might take a break every 15 or 20 minutes or so and try and answer a big block of questions. Now keep in mind that the main purpose of this webinar is really to help you guys understand GEL and understand best practices and basically get you through your GEL issues. If there's something that we happen to have examples for or anything, I'd love to show them to you, show you how to fix those issues live. So we want to make this webinar as interactive as possible. And like I said, I'll pause throughout the presentation and address questions on the fly, depending whether, obviously, whether I see them right away or whether they're relevant to the particular topic that I'm talking about. And then we'll wrap things up with a final QA session. So today, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about GEL, our point of view. So when we say our point of view, is what experiences have we had? What have we seen at different clients? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Then I'm going to cover some GEL best practices. And a lot of the best practices, I'm going to be providing an example from a webinar, or actually a live presentation that I saw at CA World 11 that was done by Sean Harp. So we do have some slides from Sean Harp, and for those of you who do not know who Sean Harp is, he was, in my mind, one of the greatest clarity engineers that there ever was. He worked for CA. Then we're going to cover some best practices, some ZOG and GEL. So how should we do ZOG and GEL? And that's mainly around getting environment variables. So how do we get environment variables from within inside of GEL? How do we persist values across from one step to another? And like I said, and meanwhile, whatever questions you guys may have on how to do particular things, we'd love to get those questions asked and we can get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up the slide deck from Sean Harp. This particular slide deck came from CA World. We're going to make it available for download, but you can also download it from the CA World webpage. It's a pretty good slide deck. It covers quite a few other items. It doesn't only just cover GEL, it covers best practices for NSQLs, for portlets, for all sorts of stuff. So I highly recommend that you guys download it anyways. But today's topic is going to be based on GEL and best practices. Okay? So the first thing is, I wanted to provide you guys with our point of view of GEL. What I call the necessary evil. I'm sure most of you have had the need where a client comes to you, or the business unit comes to you and says, I want clarity to do this. And out of the box is very difficult for it to do. So, the final and last resort that we're stuck to is utilizing GEL. Okay? Because within GEL, because we can query the database, we can ZOG data back in, so we can basically manipulate data any way that we want within inside of Clarity. So it is, I'm going to say, not totally limitless, but very limitless on what you can do. But just because it doesn't mean that we should be doing that stuff, right? I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but specifically around on-demand, GEL, they used to allow you to be able to do updates and inserts to database tables. Well, they're no longer going to be allowing to do that. And if you're a new client going into on-demand, all of your GEL scripts that had inserts or update statements now have to be Zog statements. Okay. So, all of that basically causes a major backlog on your BG engine, right? And the larger your GEL scripts and the more stuff that you have in memory, the more complicated it is for your BG engine to process all of this data. And all of this just causes performance issues across your whole Clarity component. So you really want to be careful on how you write your GEL scripts. So the first thing I'm going to do is discuss the part of zogging in GEL. Okay. One of the key problems that people have that I've seen within clients is the following. You create a GEL script that contains a Zog script, and you use the custom script parameter inside of Clarity to maintain your username, your password, and your Zog URL. Well, that's fine. You do your development in dev and you push it up to test, right? And then when you push it up to test, you push it up to production. But you have to keep in mind that if you forget to change that custom script parameter at any time, it's always going to be pointing to the previous system. Okay? But if you're doing your development in dev and you're pushing it up to test and then you're going up to prod, it isn't really a big deal, because you go into prod and you make some changes, you don't see the changes, you open up a ticket, right? They come and they say, oh, it's pointing to the wrong environment. Not, like I said, it's not the end of the world, because you're really making your changes in test or in dev or wherever that URL was pointing. The problem comes when you say, oh, well, okay, we have a production, we want that to be our golden source system, so now we're going to take this and we're going to push this database back down to our lower environments or dev and test. But what happens is that custom script parameter setting is actually stored in your database. So when it's stored in your database, what ends up happening is you end up pushing that production URL down to your lower environments. So then people start doing development and doing testing and so on inside of the dev and test environment, and what's happening is you're actually making all of the changes inside of your production environment. So it can be extremely dangerous to utilize the custom script parameter. So one of the things that was mentioned in Sean Harp's presentation is to create a custom properties file with the URL, username, and password. And you store this outside of the database. And I'm gonna show you a different way, a different methodology that we do as well, which is basically to read the properties file from your existing environment. Okay. So, and to do that, to read the NSA, and you can actually read all of the properties within inside of the NSA. So, as I mentioned, this is one way, right, where you set up your custom parameters inside of a custom properties file, and then you add an entry to the JVM settings or the JVM arguments where you specify your custom properties. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just spend a couple of seconds displaying a different methodology of how we actually get these values, and I'll do that in just a sec. All right. So then, then you can utilize the GEL scripts themselves to actually get the values using the Invoke static class to grab that data from within inside of your GEL script. Okay. Now what I'm going to show you here is this is a start script that we utilize in all of our processes. So in all of our processes, we actually make sure that this particular script is in the start step, and it's critical that it's actually in the start step of every particular process. And the reason being is the GEL object instance ID and the GEL process instance ID seem to have issues when they're not defined directly in the start step. Okay. Now, when we get the URL from the application, okay, we utilize the exact same Invoke static class, okay, but instead of using a custom properties file, we get it directly from the properties file that the application used. So we either get the app URL, right? So we get the properties, we get the web service, we get the instance, we get the address, we get the URL, and then we get the port. So what this does is this gets the data directly from the same location that your application is getting it from. And we get the same thing, for the NSA password, okay? I might even show you guys an example on how to get additional data from the NSA. Note, one of the things to note here is whatever data that we get from here is actually the unencrypted values. So if your properties file is an encrypted file, you can actually get, the unencrypted database username, password, all of this stuff directly from your properties file or your NSA settings. All right, GEL scripting best practices, okay? Like I said, all SQL tags and SOAP tags should be wrapped in GEL exception handling. And this is basically standard coding procedure for just about anything that you do. But yeah, what you want to do is you want that particular script to fail in that spot, and you'll be able to catch that exception. And you decide whether you want the script to continue or not. The main reason for this is, if you have, let's say, a ZOG file that it's going through a loop, it's got to go 550,000 times, right? And it fails on the third time. Do you want the whole thing to fail, or do you want it to continue and just trap that one exception? Okay. This is a real big one. The debug statement should be controlled via a parameter that is optional when needed. Okay. So I'm going to come back to this script here. Okay. And you notice, okay, I'm actually gonna do a brief description of this script in a second, but here I have a parameter called debug flag, okay? And this is exactly what they're talking about. So whenever you're logging data inside of a GEL script, so when you're logging data, you're actually using the GEL log or the GEL out, okay? Whenever you're doing this, it actually writes it to your BPM errors table. So whenever you're writing to the BPM errors table, that table can get pretty large because each logged item actually becomes an entry in there. So that table can get huge and can cause serious performance problems whenever you're validating your processes. So the first thing that we do is you make sure that the debug flag is set to 0. So when you generate your script, so if I take this script and I put it in Clarity, and let me put this in Clarity so I can show you what I mean here. I'm going to come back here. All right, so this is the start step of a process, and this is where that particular script always goes, the CS start, okay? And you notice whenever we have a value called parameter, okay, a GEL parameter inside of here, you get an extra little tab called custom script parameters, okay? So here we can see that we have the custom script parameters, and one of them being the username, and the other one is being the debug flag. Okay. These are critical because these are the only items that you can change within inside of a process without actually having to revalidate. Okay. I'm getting a complaint that the screen is flickering too much. I'm gonna actually switch screens here. Give me 1 second here. All right, I'm hoping that's better. I have had that happen with GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar in the past, where it flickers when I display on a different screen. All right, so the custom script parameters, like I said, are very handy because these are the only values that you're able to change inside of a validated active process without having to put it on hold to make modifications and revalidate it. So, pretty handy information, because you can't make changes to anything else within inside of a script without actually having to revalidate it. So the logging piece is critical, and I might, I can provide some additional examples on, how to delete some data from the BPM errors table as well. All right, all SQL statements need to be analyzed via an explain plan. Well, this is standard operating procedure for any query that you're going to write with inside of Clarity. This is another huge one, okay? If you're using ZOG with inside of a loop, make sure the login and log out options are outside of the loop. What does this mean? You start your gel script, okay? First thing you do is you log in, you get your session ID, okay? Then you write your query, you write your loop, right? Then your loop actually sends the Zog messages one at a time, and then at the very end you log out, okay? You don't want to log in and log out for every iteration of that loop, okay? What that causes is that causes major overhead every time you log in and you log out is additional work that the BG engine has to do. So you want to make sure that all of your session gathering is kept outside of the loop. And I'm going to actually show you different methodologies that we use to get that session ID as well. SQL update statements should not be used in anything other than custom tables. I even think now on-demand frowns upon it, even using update statements. And from what I understand, they are going to remove the update and insert statements out of the GEL scripting, so it won't be supported anymore. For those of you that have ever utilized the util sleep in GEL scripts, so what the util sleep item does is it actually pauses your GEL script in number of milliseconds. Okay, some people wanted to sleep for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. That's really bad practices because there's really only 12 GEL threads allocated for each process engine. So if all 12 are sleeping, then everything's going to appear to be hanging. Also, avoid a major use of the core set tag for performance reasons, and that's because this uses the mbeans for variable storage. And what that means is, you don't want to have a huge array of data utilized in the core set because it's going to result in significant synchronization and performance hit. Okay. You can use items such as the hash map, like I said, and Sean does provide a hash map example of the native hash map example on how to call it from here. So like I said, this particular slide deck is available from the CA World download, as well as we will provide it on our website so you guys can download it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back into this notepad to explain how this GEL scripting works. Now that we've sort of covered, I wanted to make sure that we covered at least the main piece from that CA World 11. Like I said, I had a lot of admiration for Sean Harp, and I thought he always provided great ideas, so I wanted to just share that with you guys. All right, so whenever you have a GEL script, it always starts with the GEL script tag, okay? And inside of the GEL script tag are actually the libraries that you call for that particular GEL script. So in this case, I'm calling the GEL core, okay? I'm calling the Niku GEL library. So this is the one that we use that interacts with Clarity. And what I mean by interacts with Clarity is, for example, here, this GEL parameter shows up in Clarity under here, under custom script parameters, okay? The GEL log will actually log to the process engine log. So there's several tags, and all of these tags are also available for you to see in the Jakarta website. So if you need, I'm going to put this inside of some of the answers to the questions. And then obviously, I don't have any file tag libraries or in here. For example, in this script, I'm not doing any Zog or anything, so I'm not going to bring the Zog libraries. So what are the Zog libraries? The SOAP env and the SOAP, okay, and the Zog. So these are the SOAP libraries, but because I'm not going to do that with inside of this GEL script, I want to keep this GEL script as clean as I possibly can, okay? So the first thing this particular start step does is gets the username, okay? And this username, like I said, is the one that we're going to use for Zog. You notice that we don't ask for the password or we don't store the password. I'm going to show you a different way to get the password dynamically from the system and automatically get a session ID, okay? We also get the GEL object instance ID. So whenever you write a process and you associate that process to an object, when this executes, it'll actually grab the 5 million ID of that object. And this is so you can actually rerun queries and get queries that's related to just that one object, okay? And the process instance ID. So every time a process runs, it actually has an instance ID of when it runs, okay? We also want to grab that for whenever we want to do very particular items against that process. And I'll show you a couple of examples. And the last one that I have is the debug flag, okay? And this debug flag is used for logging. So we want to control the amount of logging that goes to the application, okay? So I went through how to get the Zog URL from the application, and I'll be providing this start script for you guys. Just make sure that when you use it, you actually put it in the start step, okay? So I showed you guys how to get the URL from the application, okay? Now I can show you how to actually get the password for the system, okay? From the system for the particular user, okay? Not only get the password, to actually generate and create a session, okay? So the snippet of code that we have is this right here, okay? And this is going to utilize this parameter, which is the username parameter that was stored inside of this parameter up here, okay? Utilizing this username, it's going to actually get a session ID, and you can utilize this session ID within inside of your Zog, okay? So there are key things that you want to be careful with the session ID, okay? So keep in mind that the session in Clarity usually lasts for about an hour, give or take, depending on what your Clarity settings are. But pretty good average is an hour. So if you are getting, your session ID in step number 1, and then, you Zog some stuff, and then you try and use it in step number 2, okay, and there's an action item in between them, and the action item causes a delay, you're going to lose this session. So whenever you're zogging, make sure that you utilize this tag in that same step, in the same GEL script, and you use out the logout function to get out of that session later, okay? So, but this is very handy because now you're password independent. It doesn't matter if the password expires, changes, whatever, it's always going to get you the password from the system, from the current app that it's running off of, okay? So super handy. Your Zog files are never, your Zog scripts are never going to fail again due to a password reset or a password change, okay? Another item that we do very often is we get the user ID of the initiator of the process. So when we say the initiator of the process is the person that actually caused the start condition to trigger, okay? And that's handy because a lot of the times you might want to write your process and say, well, I want to do auditing to know who actually made these changes. And although the process is the one that's making the changes, they were really done by the person that initiated the process, okay? So what you can do is you can put this query, okay, ahead of getting the password from the system and return the value into this username component. So now your session for all of the Zogs are going to be done by the person that actually initiated. So super handy, okay? Then, here's an example of some log values. But you notice that, the key part is I always put the debug flag, okay? So you want to make sure, so you can control your logging, you want to make sure that, your debug flag is set so you can control what kind of logging you're going to see, okay? Now, there are other variables that I set up during the script, okay? And I use these strictly for housekeeping purposes, and I just set up some dates, some strings, some runtimes, and I use a lot of this for reporting purposes going forward across all of the steps, okay? Now, the one thing that we have to keep in mind with inside of GEL is with inside of GEL, whenever we write or we set variables, the variables are specific to this one GEL script. So you want to make sure that whenever you need these variables across your whole process, then you actually persist them. So here, what we do is we persist all of the variables across the instance. So this is going to persist them across the instance of your process. So across your whole process, it's going to utilize the exact same variables. So absolutely necessary, so you don't have to reset all of these ever again, okay, throughout your process. So critical thing is to, like I said, to set your start script, keep your GEL script as clean as possible in the libraries that you're going to use, right? Always, absolutely always get your GEL object instance and GEL process ID inside of your start step, okay? Always use a debug flag. And like I said, I like getting the parameters out of the NSA easier because they're always maintained correctly. And I'm going to actually show you another couple of examples which I could provide as well on other things that you can do from getting stuff out of the NSA. So, for example, here, okay, for people that, let's say you have something urgent to do, you need to get the database ID, username, and password. This little snippet of code will actually get you the unencrypted values from the NSA. So, like I said, sky's the limit on the type of items that you can do and the information you can get from the NSA, right, through a GEL script. So anything that's stored inside of your NSA, you can actually get directly from GEL using the Invoke static. All right, so I'm gonna stop for a second, and I'm gonna see if anyone has any questions. All right, so the first question I got here is, how does GEL scripting work within a SaaS environment? It works exactly the same. The only thing is, obviously, you're limited to no database operations, or you shouldn't be doing any database operations inside of your GEL scripts. CA on demand really frowns upon that. Although there's no barrier that's stopping you or preventing you from doing that. Other than that, as far as I know, there are no other limitations. And I got a couple of ones that say the screen is flickering. Besides standard libraries, any other custom libraries that we've created that you can share? Yeah, we've done a couple pretty minor, but they were very, very specific tags, and they were basically around some action item functionality. But yeah, I'll dig those up and I'll try and see if I can send them to you. Can we extract the data using SOAP client without accessing Clarity along with GEL script? Can we extract the data using SOAP client without accessing Clarity? So I'm not sure I understand that question, but yes, you can definitely extract data using the SOAP client. You just utilize a Zog read. It puts it in an XML format, and then you can just parse that XML format. It's a little bit more complicated than utilizing a query. I find querying the data much simpler and more straightforward. But yeah, it's definitely possible. What's my opinion on using the internal endpoint instead of the Zog URL? As a matter of fact, that was a new trick that I learned probably 3 or 4 years ago. I think it works great. It works. I think it's even easier than getting the URL. I would recommend, and I forgot about using the target equals internal. I think that's a great point. So I think that's a perfect new methodology. Like I said, back in the old school when I first started, that didn't exist. Or if it did exist, it was sort of one of those things that was kind of hidden from us. We did start using it. It's just I forgot all about it. So for the next question, on demand, where would I get the config file? Well, the config file, basically your properties.xml. The properties.xml is the file that actually drives your NSA. So you wouldn't have access to it, but this is the library that allows you to read that particular file. So you have to understand what that file contains, but you can just ask anyone to send you a sample properties.xml so you can see what kind of values are available inside of the properties.xml. The next question is, can you pass variables to a sub-process using persist? No. Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, as far as, so when I persist the values in here, where's my start step here? I'm persisting them across the instance value, right? That's my scope. I'm not 100% sure if you can actually do a sub-process, although, I mean, inside of a sub-process, you can pass the ID between processes. I hope that answers the question. The next question is, I guess the CMN config table contains the properties.xml. That is correct. The CMN config table contains the properties.xml, although only when you restart the app, right? Whenever you change the properties.xml, if you don't restart the app, it doesn't get uploaded unless you do the upload config command from the command prompt. But yes, the difference is in the CMN config table, it stores the values as they are in the properties.xml, which is the encrypted values, right? It basically takes the XML and uploads it directly. So the difference is when you use GEL to read the values, when you use GEL to read the values, then you actually get the unencrypted values. Okay, I don't have any other questions here at the moment. So I'm going to just go through a couple of other items that I have here. So I'm going to actually cover, so I'm just going to cover some GEL best practices, not only best practices, but some other items. So give me 1 second here. Let me just pull up another screen here. All right, so I'm gonna bring out some notes. So I got a question here that says, oh wait, I got a whole bunch of new questions. Do I have a soft copy of this presentation? Yeah, I'll definitely send a soft copy. We're also going to be recording this. This will be available for everyone. So feel free to just review or preview it again whenever you want. Do I have any string functions like length? Are you looking for an example? Yeah, I mean, there are string functions in GEL for length. I personally hate them, so especially, I mean, if you want to do length or any of that type of string functions, I prefer to use the SQL tag and utilize SQL functionality. But yes, I can send you some examples. So here I got another question. If I can show how to submit, approve a cost plan via GEL. Well, that would just be straight Zog. I mean, GEL and Zog would basically be the same thing. So I believe I covered how to submit a cost plan via Zog in our Zog Best Practices webinar. But if not, feel free to reach out. At the end of this webinar, we'll put our contact info so you can reach out to us about those questions. As far as I got another question saying, can we show the scripts that we're sharing? Yeah, definitely. We'll be sharing all of the scripts that we're showing, and they'll be shared as part of the webinar replay. Another question is, do you have any examples of Zog to import transactions? Yeah, that's the imp transaction Zog. You can actually get that directly from your XML sample files. So if you go wherever you have Zog installed, let me just see if I can show you it quickly here. Yeah, I can definitely send you an example of the transaction import. But like I said, it should be standard. It should be set in your actual Zog import install file under XMLs. Are arrays available in GEL? Not sure I understand. Yeah, you can definitely do arrays in GEL. But if you want to expand on that question, I can definitely see if I can help answer it a little better. So I got another question here. It says, I used to have some troubles conditioning empty values in core if. Oh, the core if does not seem to work properly, especially when null values. I do remember having some issues with that null value. So the thing is, it really depends where the value is coming from. I would actually not only put core if test. So I'm just going to try. I'm going to copy this so people can actually see what I'm talking about. I'm going to copy this question and see if I can. So the question is, all right. So this doesn't always work, and it doesn't always send it as true. So like I said, it really depends where that value is coming from. I would put an or in here as well, and use an empty string. A lot of the times the value, it calculates null differently than an empty string. So I would say add, or does not equal an empty string. Try that. That should fix your problem. And that would be sort of your empty function call. All right, so I got another one here. We're quite new to GEL and Zog in our on-demand environment. Where would be a good place to start? Feel free to send me an email. I mean, I've got, on the forums and stuff, there's a bunch of documents, GEL for Dummies, starting with GEL, that kind of thing. But really, it depends on what it is that you need to accomplish. As far as Zog is concerned, you guys can feel free to go to our website. We have a Zog client that really facilitates zogging. So it's a GUI for Zog. I'm going to actually open it up here quickly. So it's not only a web-based UI, but you can actually run Zogs. It's got a Zog window. You can run single Zogs or batch Zogs. Just show you how that works, right? So you can run single requests, right? So a window like the same as the old Zog client used to have, or bulk request if you need to do 10 or 50 or 100 Zog requests at a time. It also has a query component. So if you're on demand and you want to run a query against the database, you can say select ID name from INV, and you say run query, and what this will do is this will dynamically run it through the API layer and spit out the results for you. So, and then if you go to the home, if you guys are on premise, you're not on demand, you can actually download a desktop version. So that's a good place to start for Zog. As far as GEL, like I said, you go to the forum and there's a million little documents that you can get. But feel free to send us an email, ask us a question. Like I said, whatever I have, I'll gladly send to you guys. All right, so I have another question. Do you have any examples of zogging out a document stored in the DB in an on-demand environment and reading that file in GEL? So I have examples of zogging out documents. As you know, the problem with the whole document, so documents and Zog are probably the only type of different kind of animal that there are, which means you need to provide a file path inside that is accessible from that Clarity server for you to be able to see that, which means you would probably have to use your on-demand FTP location, map a network drive to that to be able to pull out, Zog out your document and to be able to visualize it. I do have an example somewhere. We have done that before. I never actually read it through GEL, but I mean, I can provide you the example on how to read it, how to position it on the map network drive, and then you can just use the file manipulation components of GEL to be able to read that file. Although, GEL's pretty limited on reading files. If it isn't a CSV, I mean, it's not going to be able to read a Word file or an Excel file, right? doesn't really have the libraries to allow you to do that. You know, it would be able to do text files, but you know, most common would be some type of CSV file. All right, I think I'm done answering all the questions at the moment. Let me continue here. So, you know, I've talked about variables within inside of GEL, right? So I'm gonna actually describe the 5 ways that you can declare variables within inside of GEL. Okay. So there's the GEL parameter. So we discussed the GEL parameter, right? The GEL parameter is the piece that actually comes inside of GEL, and you can see it in the custom script parameter section here. Okay. This is, I would say that this is going to be for pretty static values that you want to use that, right? Static but versatile enough that you can actually modify it without having to revalidate your process. Okay. The core set is used for basic variables. Okay. That means ones that don't have to be extracted from an XML document. Common is from, you know, query results. The GEL set, okay, this is good when you're trying to extract the value from an XML document. Okay. Note that you're gonna need to be sure that you're familiar with the XPath location. Okay, so the XPath location, if you're unfamiliar with it, would be something like this. So, you know, think of it as a hierarchical view, right? So we have the ZOG results. So if I was to look at this particular value, and I'm going to actually copy this into a new email here, to a new page here, you know, this would look something like this. And then the value that we're looking for is the statistics. So that's basically what your XPath would look like, okay? And the variable that we're looking for is stats. So that's how the GEL set would work, right? So you say GEL set, right? You set it as a string equals false, and then you select what you want, right? Right? And this basically tells you the top level hierarchy to it, and then the stats, which is the value within inside the node that you want, okay? The GEL persist, okay, this allows you to set the variable with a scope that extends beyond the current script, okay? So this is key, like I said, if you want to send variables across a process, okay, it's critical. The GEL parse, this is handy when you're looping and you're trying to build XML documents in memory, okay? So this is how you would build a ZOG request, and I'm going to see if I can show you guys an example. So it can be used to, you know, to either add the whole XML document or particular nodes. So we use this a lot, for example, if you're doing allocations or that kind of thing, where you need to loop the particular values in order because they're part of a timescale value, and because they're part of a timescale value, then they all need to be grouped together because the timescale values in Clarity, because they're stored as a blob, they do basically a sweep and replace, which means they take whatever's there and they replace it with whatever you send. So very, very common item to utilize when you want to build XMLs in memory. Obviously, you want to be very careful on the size of the document that you utilize for your XML, right? You don't want to have monstrous XML files kept in memory inside of your BG engine, because that's going to cause problems. So the other item that I didn't cover on here would be, you know, database operations of what's available. Add some additional information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create some additional sample scripts for you guys to be able to share with you guys, so you guys can have additional information that may be needed, right? And like I said, this is the last one that says, you know, the SQL statement, right, which sets the data source, which allows you to connect to the database. Now, there was one thing that I didn't actually talk in here, which is the ability to actually connect into different databases, okay? Here, right, we say GEL set data source to DB equals Niku. Well, what this value is the actual value inside of the NSA, okay? So That's what the idea of that database is. So if you create an additional external database inside of your NSA, okay, you can reference it here, and then you can query that database directly from GEL. Okay, so you can query multiple data sets. So I actually got a question, what is the syntax for connecting to an external database? Okay, so what you would want to do is here you would just say, so you change the DB ID, right? And this value here has to match an external connection in your NSA. Okay, so you can create an external database connection in your NSA, and then you can reference it directly from in here. And if you like, I can definitely send you some additional examples on how to do this. I mean, I have some GEL scripts somewhere where we've done this in the past. All right, so next question. How do you find a path for the select statement? For example, the variable for status, result, SOAP and body stats, update records. Let me look for those. So basically what you're trying to do is I'm guessing what you're trying to do here is you're trying to parse the result set of your ZOG to find out how many records were successful or not. And you want to be able to parse the statistics. Let me send some examples on parsing statistics from ZOG results for you. I was looking for some this morning. I actually didn't find any. But I know that we've got lots. Of just I cleaned my computer and cleaned my backup, and of course nothing was in my backup. But yeah, I can definitely send. I know exactly what you're looking for. I'll send you the snippet of code, and I'll add that to these particular files on how to make sure that you can get the result sets from ZOG. I'm gonna just stop for a second because we only got 5 minutes left for this. I just want to make sure that I've covered everything. I wanted to stop and take a couple of seconds to show a new service announcement that we're doing. Basically, we're offering new integrations as a service, and what we're trying to do is we're basically trying to make people's life easier for integrating into Clarity. So we're doing it, I'm going to say, you know, almost for free. To be able to give people a better experience into integrating into Clarity. We've got, you know, 30 out-of-the-box integrations. One of them includes custom integration, so, you know, it'll include any custom integrations, all done super, super cheap. And like I said, the reason is to try and give people a better experience of integrating into Clarity. We know that, you know, a lot of people are having difficulties into finding that. Just in case, feel free to send us an email with any questions as well. And Lowell, like I said, send me an email directly, and I'll look for these particular stats. But I'll make sure that I put all of that information inside of the scripts that I provided. I'll also include some additional papers, you know, basically any help files that we've got from GEL that I've gotten from forums and so on. We'll try and post them up there so people can get some benefit out of them. And like I said, I can't state enough that if you guys have a question regarding GEL or an issue that you'd like us to help you with, I would like for you guys to feel free and reach out to us. Now, at the end of this webinar, you guys are going to be asked to fill in a quick survey. It's only 4 or 5 questions. The purpose of the survey is to try and see how we can improve these webinars, what kind of topics you guys want to hear, what you want to talk about, what times are best. You know, we always pick this time, but sometimes people want earlier, people want later. So we just want to hear from you guys, get your opinion, and get your suggestions on what you would like to see and what topics are important to you guys. So, you know, if you guys can spend a couple of seconds, like I said, it's only 5, 6 questions, and it would be beneficial to the whole group. That way we know what interests you guys so we can keep tailoring these webinars towards your needs. I want to thank you guys again. I mean, we're kind of running out of time at the moment. You know, either way, we'll probably have to do a repeat of this webinar because we exceeded the number of attendees. Therefore, I'm sure some people got left out. So we'll probably be doing a rerun at some point. So I want to thank everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.